Hello, human peoples. You're listening to the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. To support us and gain access to great exclusive podcasts like Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and our latest show, Spiel Boys, head over to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We do game streaming, movie nights with our patrons every Friday night, and you can even commission your own podcast about anything you want. Literally anything, within reason, and we have to do it. You are quite frankly out of excuses not to go visit patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds.
Movies. We're doing movies today.
This one's for real. I think this is
It's
like
a movie.
the most elegant thing you and I have ever talked about together as a film, right?
50 Shades. But yeah, sure. Listen. Hey, everybody. Hi.
Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Yeah.
My name is David Bell.
My name is Adam Ganser.
And we just watched Tar.
TR! TR!
It's short for Tarzan.
TR!
If you're here, then you already know who she is. Lydia Tarr is many things. As a conductor, Tarr began her career with the Cleveland Orchestra, Chicago Symphony Orchestra, the Boston Symphony Orchestra, until she at last arrived here at our own New York Philharmonic. In 2013, Berlin elected Tarr as its principal conductor, and she's remained there ever since. Lydia Tarr has also written music for the stage and screen. She is one of only 15 EGOTs, meaning those who have won all 4 major entertainment awards. Thank you for joining us, Maestro.
Thank you.
It deserves to be roared. Like that name. It really deserves like a roar. You can't do this on like a gentle, sweet way.
No, you can't. You really can't.
No.
All right.
Yeah.
So this is we're nearing the Oscars.
Yeah.
We're trying to cover I tried, and I think I might have kind of failed to cover everything. There's still some
did
best
you?
pictures.
Okay.
What was surprising
That's
is
fun.
that this year we had kind of already covered a lot of them.
Well, you see a lot of
this isn't-
movies. You watch a lot of
Yeah.
movies.
This isn't up for Best Picture. This is
Are you sure?
I think the Blanche is up for Best Actress, right?
I think it's up for Best Picture, Dave.
Oh, okay.
I'm looking that up right now. I'm almost certain. It'd be
Okay.
shocking if it was not.
I guess spoilers for this film. A movie that, like, I think it's weird is in my circles, people were talking about it. I don't know how popular this film is. It's on streaming. I would recommend go watch it.
Definitely.
Yeah. Adam, how did you like Tar?
I want to make sure it is 100% up for Best Picture. It's also up it's also up for Best Director. It's also up for Best Screenplay.
Who's the director? I know he's
Todd Field. Todd Field.
Yeah, who worked as an actor in Eyes Wide Shut, and you can tell he's worked with Kubrick.
Oh yeah. Yeah. He also directed. He only directs like once in a while. He directed In the Bedroom, that Andre Dubus short story made in a film.
He was Drippy on Aqua Teen.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, he's been in Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Yeah.
Well, that's a varied career. So I'm going to answer your question. This is far and away my favorite film this year.
Oh.
Yeah, it really is. It's far and away my favorite film. Now, I really liked The Banshees of Inisherin. So
yeah, so you actually mean last year, right?
Excuse me. Yes, 2022. Yes.
Yeah.
It's far and away my favorite of the crop that's going to be up for Best Picture.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and I've watched it twice now, actually, because I watched it long enough ago that when you asked me to cover it, I was like, I kind of need to watch it again. It's been a little bit. And the second time, I had extremely different emotions than the first time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, I've seen contention online about what this film was about, and I don't. So I like this film as well.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel like it was that complicated, though. And I like the movie. You haven't seen Triangle of Sadness, right?
No, that's one of my big blind spots. That and Fablemans.
I'm not gonna. Yeah, I won't spoil it. Triangle of Sadness, I felt the same way though, which is that the message, which again I won't spoil. What in the end, it's like kind of a no shit, where it's like, yeah, that it's what made it unique is how it's told. Whereas that I don't find Tar particularly complex in its morals or message, I would argue.
Only that it's humanizing this phenomenon. I think that's what makes it complicated. And I think that when people say that it's complicated, so like people need to know what we're talking about. So this is the story of like a person at the very top of her field, which in this case is like she is a conductor, a maestro, which it turns out is a much more important job than it seems at first glance.
Yes, they do a good job at making me go, okay. You're not just waving your hands around, which I would obviously the analogy here is she's a director. She directs people. She's in or she's a boss. She's in a position of power and admiration.
Correct. So and it's the story of her basically using that position to exploit people that work for her to sleep with her and
young women specifically.
And it going and like promising them work favors. It's the classic exploiting your position of power for like work favors and then not delivering those favors and that whole thing and punishing people for not wanting to participate in it and so on. And then falling. It's a downfall story.
Yeah, she gets found out.
Yeah.
And this is what I mean where it was like it's as straightforward because I don't know. Maybe it's because of my vantage of people who this has happened to, where it's like at the end it was just sort of like, "Yep, that's what happens." But it's a very good exploration. It is a human, like it's not like when we say like it's the humanized version. It's not trying to like be like, "Don't you feel bad for her?"
No,
it's
not at all.
that.
No,
it's showing how these people exist within society. She's not completely a monster. There's a part where someone says, you have one relationship that isn't transactional.
That's right.
And she's sleeping in the next room.
Her wife
referring
says
to
that.
her daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're right. It's like, yeah, she loves her daughter. She's not an ogre, but she has done monstrous things and she has found a way to justify it. Mm-hmm. And I think it's also exploration of how the world around her does this like removed academic. Because like one of the first things that happens in this, is she talks with her mentor and they speak. There's a part where he says something like, so-and-so once said that the true sign of intelligence is, not like...
How much can you handle noise?
How much can you handle noise? And then they're like, didn't that guy also throw his wife down the stairs? And they're like, yeah. And they move on.
Right.
And it's this academic removal of this idea of like, well, these people have a legacy and that's more important. Or like, it's about... that like this is basically her racing her bad deeds to get her legacy.
They're constantly
big concert.
They're constantly holding up a conversation about separating the art from the artist and about how the art is not reflective of identity in a way that initially seems somewhat compelling because or at least somewhat logical.
They present kind of a straw man, I would say.
Right, of course.
I don't think I think a lot of things were done on purpose.
Right.
I think it's very purposeful that they chose conducting an art that we don't really fully understand, most people. Mm-hmm. I don't think it was a mistake that they didn't show much of her as a talented, like they don't really show, they never go like, look how talented she is.
They show the resume. That's what they do.
That's what I mean is they show other people talking about her. They never have a moment like a comparison. I keep hearing this compared to Whiplash, right? Whiplash is a different film.
Oh, no.
It's about a different thing.
Yeah, I don't agree with that.
Yes.
It's not Whiplash.
But like, it's not Whiplash. Absolutely not. But Whiplash has a moment where they're like, but look, listen to the music. It's so good, right? And I would say Whiplash tells a story that justifies that more. This never does that, where they're like, oh, but boy, can she conduct. Listen to that. They don't care. Like, the movie doesn't care if she's good. You know what I mean?
The movie doesn't feel the need to prove that she's good.
Yes.
It's stated as a fact. I mean, they show her doing her job, and she clearly has talent at understanding music.
Yes.
There's no question about that.
They show it way later once we've
Yeah.
already realized what she is.
Right.
You
They
know
don't,
what I mean?
They didn't feel the need to justify it. That's 100% true. What's interesting is they present all these conversations that are the very ones that we have online in the quote unquote civilized discourse. And they manage to contextualize all of them so that the consequences of being an exploitative figure like she is are always sort of snugly butted up against the art versus artist conversation. Like it's really creatively done and very subtly done, and it's very effective, I would say.
Yes. Oh yeah, my favorite because it is like Cate Blanchett basically just fucking killing it.
She's incredible in this. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's showing how a person like this can exist and justify it. Because there's this idea at the beginning where they point out, like, you know, you're a pioneer, you're a woman conductor, there weren't that many before you. And so you realize right away, like, she has, but at the same time, she's casting off any accusations of people being monsters. She talks to this guy in a classroom who's basically like, Buck is a monster. As
right.
You know, as the like from where I'm standing, I'm not going to study or celebrate Bach. And you could argue that maybe it's like, well, you know, maybe you should still, if you're an art student, you should study people even if they're bad. That there's absolutely that argument.
She
to make,
does
so
that argument. She makes
that argument. Yeah. And where I said it's a straw man is that I think that most students would, but I'm not a teacher. I don't know. Most students would agree with that. That it's like you can study a long dead person even if they're a monster. But the point being that they start with this way of like, oh, they're trying to frame it that like, yeah, we're on her side of that. But then as they keep talking, you realize that this is where I got from it again, that the academic detachment, when they talk about the guy who threw his wife down the stairs, my thought was like, well, then maybe that saying isn't correct.
I think that's what, that's the quote unquote genius, I'm going to put that in quotes, of the movie, is that they managed to make you feel both sides of the argument impactfully, I would say. Right?
Yeah, but I think
that's hard to do. And that's hard to do in this climate, I would say.
Yeah,
you know,
that's why I went back to like, I think ultimately what they say wasn't too complex though.
That's true.
Because the answer, they never asked the question, nor should they, does this woman deserve to see consequences? Of course she does.
Yeah,
and
she
the
does.
movie thinks that.
Yeah.
She is in a position of power and she should be taken away. And ultimately, spoilers, she still maintains power at the end. She's just in her nightmare world. She's now playing like an anime convention, which is like Jason Pargin, who saw this, I described it as like a one giant joke, and that's the punchline.
That's funny.
Yeah, because it kind of is. But the idea is like she's still doing fine, you know, like she didn't actually see any consequences legally for what she did.
She lost, but like this is where it's like, I don't know, man. I don't think that anything happens to her that she doesn't deserve. Like, let me get that out right up top.
Of course.
But she lost the thing she loved, which is the prestige and being seen as one of the masters and, you know, being at the top of her field. That's gone. She lost all that.
She lost it, but I would argue she threw it out.
I agree. I completely agree with that.
Yeah. I know it's semantics here, but like the point being that it's like, again, at the end, it's like, you're right. She lost her legacy that she was holding, you know, in this such high regard, but like, she's not poor, you know, like she's fine. I liked the idea that it's, I saw theories that the ending is actually a fantasy. I don't know if that's true.
Because she has to move back into her parents' house. Mm-hmm. She like, I mean, I'm not arguing with you. Like, I'm just arguing what is the movie saying? Because like, I think by the metric of how do we evaluate like the Louis C.K.'s of the world or whatever, like she didn't suffer consequences in that she didn't go to jail or something. But like, for her, legacy was everything. That's what the whole first 30 minutes of this movie's about. Like, that's her. That's what everything's about for her.
I don't think the movie needed to punish her more. I think the point is that
it's
ultimately, it's more of just like, I don't know if it's enough or not. They don't like she didn't kill anybody. You know what I mean?
Right.
She abused her position, and there's at least it's implied that it's all consensual. But of course, she is exerting. You know, she's using her position to get the thing she wants.
Well, she's
she's
literally doing quid pro quo. To be clear, she's literally grooming women to be like to get orchestra positions and stuff because they know her, and then punishing them if they don't do what she says.
Exactly. So what she's doing is objectively wrong and bad and exploitative.
Right.
What I was saying is like, very clearly she's not. There's I don't think there's any technical law she's breaking. Right.
That's true. Right.
I think that's the idea, which is that like, no, I didn't expect her to go to jail. I think what the movie's pointing out more is like, she did something that feels like you should go to jail for. She did something really bad. Someone kills themselves because of her.
Yeah, that's right.
She is exploiting these young women. But in this world, the worst that can happen to her is she just has to go to another country and like get pampered and do a slightly, worse job in her mind. You know what I mean? Like she has to move back home, but the home is fine. It's the idea, like I think of her ego is the biggest thing that gets punished here.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. I mean, everything.
She doesn't get her legacy, but the whole point I thought of the movie was like, this is the reverence we put for the legacy is exactly the problem. Like she at some point she feels untouchable because she's like
100%.
I'm a great maestro. What's going to happen to me? I can do whatever I want.
There's this great moment with her daughter where this is very early in the film, by the way. She finds out her daughter's being hit by another kid. And she goes up to that kid and says, if you do this again, I will get you. And nobody will believe you because I'm an adult and you're not. And like later on in hindsight, you realize, oh, that's who she is behind closed doors with everybody.
I will get you, and no one will believe you because I am the maestro. Yeah,
that's wild. Like there's so many cool moments that, like, when you think about it in hindsight, you realize what was actually going on there.
Yes, because there's a haunting that's happening too.
Yes,
there's a supposed supernatural element, and I think that threw people off. I think that's why I've seen people go like, "Oh, the third act is all in her head," which I'm just like, why? Like, I don't know, man. I think it's supposed to show that is the actual guilt that she is just tucking away.
Yeah, that's exactly
like
what it is.
Yeah, that idea that she knows what she's doing is bad and she's being haunted by it, but it's like she's perceiving it as external forces.
I think the guilt is a way of telling us that everything about the world that she is invested in to start the film is also built on a bit of fiction. Like there's a really key moment at the end after she's lost everything where she goes back to her brother's house and we find out her name isn't even Lydia.
It's Linda.
It's Linda. It's a totally different name, implying she has this whole other person that she is and other world that she has suppressed to be Lydia Tarr.
Yeah, because the other thing they show in that sequence is she clearly didn't come from a bad childhood. Her room is highly decorated. They recorded all her stuff. They were clearly proud of her. The point being that it's like if someone is ashamed of where they come from, that could mean where they came from was abusive or horrible, but it doesn't seem that way. It seems like she doesn't like that she came from roots that felt simple.
Right.
Like I think Linda to Lydia, she's trying to glamorize and make herself more sophisticated.
She continues to say she says, for instance, of the young woman who commits suicide, she wasn't one of us. That's her reaction to that news. She wasn't one of us. And
she couldn't hack it.
Yeah. And it's haunting.
Yeah. Because it's all built into. This is where it intersects with Whiplash, is the idea of a competitive art form where you can hack it or you can't, being a really easy way to abuse people, where it's that's what it is. She's using this world to be abusive because it's like, hey, you can't hack it. It's a competitive world out there. But of course, the thing we're learning is they do these auditions, and she's using the auditions to find women to groom, and they audition behind this barrier to imply that they don't see the people, but
objective.
She has found ways to figure out who they are, and they're a number, right?
That's right.
And so it's like, I'll pick this number. And I think, of course, that reflects the fucking climax of the movie. What I would consider is the brothel, because after she's completely, because like you're talking about this fiction, this idea of like putting a buffer between what she is and reality, or what she thinks she is in reality, is. But again, people should have watched this movie, so I'm not going to go through the movie.
They do need to go. This is worth watching to have a deeper emotional consideration of
100%
the things that have happened and the stories that we've heard in the last like this is a slightly fresh almost like a repackaging of the issues in a way.
That's why I was comparing it to that other film, because I don't think this movie is saying anything profound. It's just telling the story really well. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like showing it, so near the ending, she goes to this other country. I don't think they name the country, and she's doing this other gig, and she goes to the hotel, and she's like, is there a place to get a massage? And the guy gives her a place to go to, and she goes in, and she realizes way too late it's one of them sex places.
Right.
And they say to her, she walks into a room called the Fishbowl, and it's filled with young women with numbers on their chest, and they say, pick a number. And one of the girls looks directly at her, and she runs outside and she vomits. And like I was like, oh, what does that mean? And Hana was watching it, picked up on it immediately, which is that she's got seen. She was finally seen by like that moment. She's doing what she's doing is no different than what she was doing during the auditions, but this is like the raw version. They're treating her like she is. They're saying, who do you want to have sex with? Pick a number.
And she can't handle that. Right.
Yeah, she can't handle the fact that that's the reality rushing to her, right? Like, that's how I interpreted it after talking about it, which is like, they're treating her as what she actually is, or what she's been like, right? Which is like she was hiding.
Fell off, right?
Yeah. She was hiding behind the auditions and the art, that they're like, no, you're just picking a number of a woman you want to sleep with. That's what you were doing this whole time. And so just do it. Pick the number. And then, like, Hana was pointing out that we never really see the faces of the other women. And so it seems like it's all around the idea of, like, not wanting to be seen by these people. Like, we never see the redhead, even in pictures, right?
That's right. Her face is always obscured by the hair. That's right.
Yeah. It's the shame. It's the idea of like not wanting to be exposed, and she's hiding behind all this other world in order to be a predator.
Yeah, I mean, what do you make of the dog? Where she sees that dog that's chasing her? Do you think that's like her seeing herself?
I don't know. That's the stuff where people start interpreting. Like, does the dog represent guilt? She hears the women screaming.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's apparitions like in shots, like you can see people in the background in certain shots.
Oh,
when she gets up at night.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I guess like but that one's obvious. She's being haunted by this woman,
right,
who killed herself. Right. How did you interpret the dog?
That was the hardest thing for me to interpret in the whole movie. Like, I feel like maybe it's probably some form of self-punishment. Right? Like. The only thing that seems to genuinely scare her is death and consequences, right? Like, like she, remember that scene where she like encounters the old woman who needs to be transferred to the.
Oh, I loved that.
And
because
like,
what
it
happens,
made her sick.
Yes.
Right?
It made her sick. And then because she doesn't, she's seeing a future she doesn't want. Right.
Right.
And also, what I loved about that is she has sympathy. She helps the old woman, and then later, when things are going really wrong, they show up at the door, and they're like, "Listen, we're going to try to sell the apartment. We noticed you were like doing rehearsals in here," and she like says like, "Oh, you're welcome." Like, "Oh yeah,
right, you're welcome."
Yeah. And they're like, "No, can you keep it down?" And the moment they challenge her artistry, her genius, she flips.
Right,
and
she loses her mind.
she plays the accordion and starts screaming horrible things, like your mother's in hell and stuff like that, or whatever she says. And so you realize like the mask comes off so easily the moment you imply to her that she's not a genius or that what she does isn't good. Because again, she sees what she does as like so amazing that it's like, how could you question me? You know, how could you, what's a few lives for what I'm doing? That's the impression I got from that.
Right. Which kind of, I mean, I think that is necessary to become a kind of Harvey Weinstein character, right? Is right. Like you have to believe you're entitled to that, right? Like yeah. I mean, that feels like that's what that's about.
I think she's in a world that is like, she's in this world that acts like she's entitled to it. Yeah,
right. Yeah. Well,
and
that's
congratulate all the old people, and I think that's where the millennials come into play because she starts using a word, and at first you don't pick it up right away, but then she starts using it all the time. Robots. Mm-hmm. She says these millennial robots. These robots.
Yes.
And it reminds me of Elon Musk loves to call people NPCs. And it's because they think they're the main character.
That's right.
Like they think that, but also what she's describing is that young people starting to reject that way, right? Like they're starting to reject the system that is allowing her like the reverence.
That's what's so great about that cellist, the Russian cellist, who she is clearly trying to.
Fuck. Yeah,
she doesn't care about her work as a conductor. She isn't inspired by the greats. She doesn't think like, for instance, Bach and Beethoven are that interesting. She doesn't go and like listen to the old tapes. She watches YouTube of cellists and stuff.
Yeah,
you know?
But Tar, she wants to fuck her, so she tolerates it. She's like, oh, okay. Like, she treats her completely differently than that other guy.
Exactly.
Because she didn't want to fuck that guy.
Right. That's right. Another fascinating aspect is, like, how much all these people actually hate each other.
Yes.
Behind an incredibly curated civility. Like, she has this lunch with this guy, Elliot, who runs a society of some kind that seems like it's funding things for her. Like their relationship is not completely clear, but he's not a great conductor. He's an average conductor, I guess, is what we're supposed to.
According to her, right? Like
according
we don't
to him
really
too.
Know.
According to him too.
That's true.
He acknowledges that she's a genius and he's not. As soon as the story is out about her, he cannot wait to triumph over her. And there is real viciousness between them,
for sure,
and it's fascinating.
Oh yeah, and I've experienced stuff like that firsthand. Like I do think there is that if you're in a competitive industry where everybody is kind of secretly like, I want to do better than everybody else.
That's right.
The moment someone is like, oh, you're like, that is the flip side. The moment someone is exposed to being terrible, it does create a situation where everybody can say, okay, we're dropping you like a bad habit, which I'm not saying they shouldn't, but it is funny because it's suddenly like everybody's like, oh yeah, I never liked that person.
Right.
And
you were always bad. Yeah.
Jesus. Yeah. And it's like, you can say, I liked that person. You can say like, oh, I thought Louis C.K. was funny. Too bad. Like, too bad. We don't have to support them anymore. Like, you can still not support them and admit that up until that moment you were a fan, because like it's okay to do that. Like no one likes feeling tricked or wrong. So I think that's a way that people do that. But in this case, it's that like they're in a already competitive place where it really does feel like everybody just already hated each other to begin with. Like there's no friendships here. Because it really is the idea that they're all at work. And this is why you're supposed to have friendships outside of work, right?
Yeah. I mean, at least in theory.
Everybody wants to be top dog.
Right.
And so it's like, if that's your entire social circle. Like, me and Jason were talking about this movie when we were talking about American Psycho. That's where it came up. Because it's a similar environment, right? Where it's like everybody is kind of trying to get something from everybody else.
Right. There's a lot of transactional relationships. 100%. 100%.
Yeah, and the moment she can't provide something, and it goes both ways, is like the moment the mask is off, she also does it. She also like is insulting and horrible.
She is vicious to him in a way that's like, wow, you really never respected this guy.
Exactly. Yeah, he's not terrible. He's not that bad to her. That should be clear. Like
it's all behind a civility mask, though. That's the thing,
right?
Like it's like he didn't need to say, for instance, "I trust we'll never see each other again." Like that's his way of saying you fucked up. You know, like
yes, he doesn't care what she did. He's just like, haha,
now it's my turn. Now it's my turn.
Yeah, because he's part of that system. Like that's the whole thing. Is then you see a good comparison is the young woman that she's trying to groom, who after the accusations come out isn't gloating. She's just like, I don't want to be near you. Like she's sort of like they go to the hotel and she's like, well, what are you doing later? And she's like, oh, I have something, and walks away. And it's like it's clear she's not interested in her anymore. Because she's genuinely horrified by her. It's not about like leveraging it. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because they're presenting. That's the funny thing is for all the first millennial we see feels like a straw man, but what they're ultimately saying is like they're functioning on actual morals. We're not trying to broadly comment on any generation, but I think it's showing how the new generation, and I think this is true, is a lot more mindful of a person's actions instead of their legacy, right?
I think it's showing how much people get entrenched in certain entitlements and behaviors, and how they are like in her case, in Tara's case, like she doesn't even want to be considered as a woman. Like that bothers her because she wants to be a part of this grand institution. She wants She wants to eat at the place that Beethoven ate. She wants to like, you know, and anybody who doesn't.
That was such a good scene.
Yeah, anybody who doesn't honor that tradition is like an alien to her. She doesn't understand people like that
unless she's trying to fuck them. That's the whole thing.
Or she overlooks that. She'll overlook it then. You know?
Yeah. Because that millennial. The young woman that she's grooming, like again, she doesn't like. She's the big thing about her is also it's implied that she's also talented, right? She's good.
She's definitely good. She wins votes that are anonymous votes to be a soloist and so on. Yeah, that's right.
She's good, and that what they're implying there is the idea of like you don't have to actually respect the institutions or study Beethoven to be good. You can just be good. And that's the thing at the end when she's like, all right, fuck off, Tar. Like it's again, she doesn't need anything from her. She's not playing the same game. Whereas Tar feels like, yeah, it's all politics. And like I love that scene where she's having lunch with her, which she's really like she's doing like this. It's the start of the grooming where it's like there's no reason for her to be doing this lunch, and she says to her like she's going on the menu. She's like, there's really nothing if you don't eat meat. I'm sorry. The cucumber salad I hear is good. And then they talk about how this is where places where Beethoven sat and stuff. And then the girl orders something like I think with meat. And then Tar says, I'll have the cucumber salad. Because you realize there's nothing there for her to eat. Right. She doesn't like the place.
Doesn't want to be there, really, if she thought about it at all deeply.
She thought it was an impressive place and it's part of the institution. Yeah. And this girl, like, she also is like, oh, we leave flowers on this, like a socialist icon's grave, this revolutionary. And she says, we do it on this date. And she's like, oh, is that her birthday? And she's like, no, it's International Women's Day. And so it's like the idea that, like, Tar is completely ignorant to the idea of social causes or to the idea of, like, that there's anything else in the world. Like, she's not interested in people or causes about people, whereas this young woman clearly is thinking about that stuff.
Well, again, because Lydia is no longer part of a real world. Like, I mean, that's what continues to be reinforced in her dialogue with her, you know, older mentor figure, in her lunch with the way that she's talked to with the New Yorker guy. Like, all her colleagues and her are detached from the real world. And so, like, any journey into it is actually
very like
traumatic for her.
Yeah,
You know?
it's a very like stuffy liberal world. Like it's again interviewed by the New Yorker. Like all the jokes are really like, oof. And like you're right. That's part of the punchline at the end? Because at the end, basically, she's leading an orchestra at like an anime convention, and it's the theme to Monster Hunter. The implication there is
I didn't know that. That's great.
oh yeah, and of course Monster Hunter, who's
Right,
the
of course.
monster who got
Right.
hunted. But also it's kind of the punchline of like, yeah, who gives a fuck about classical music anyway? Like what she like it's kind of that where it's like you're right, it's this big insular world, and at the end of the day it's just like, I don't know, she could also be doing an anime convention. Like it's like this is the low art for her, but at the end of, like it is kind of just like taking the piss out of it. Where it's like, yeah, who gives a shit about this insular weird world that they're acting
That's
like
true. Yes.
yeah, that she's so important because she's really good at classical music, and it's like, yeah, she might be better than Mark Strong, but at the end of the day, she can be replaced by him, and she is.
And at the end of the day, this is somewhat trivial.
It's
you know,
music.
like
yeah, it's
not
like,
even music. It's not even like she's not a music. Well, she is a musician. She's not even the musician here,
right.
You know, like I think you're absolutely right. The movie is sort of gently saying that because she, yeah, like every time, like there's several like real world things that she can't really handle or doesn't like know how to interact with, like death.
Her world falls apart when her assistant leaves because she passes up her assistant,
That's right.
who's clearly been working her fucking ass off for her.
Well,
Yeah.
and clearly was groomed. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yes,
like,
yes,
yeah.
100%. Yeah,
Clearly, Lydia exploited that relationship.
Yes.
You know, and yeah, and she's just not able to handle it. She's also like stealing her wife's pills.
yep.
Like I don't know if that's just to get high or if it's like she telling us she
I
can't
think
cope with reality. I don't know.
Yeah, the idea is she has heavy anxiety.
Right.
And the anxiety is, I think, in the form of her being haunted. And again, it's this idea of like, they do a good job with this where they're like, we're not saying poor her. We're saying that if you do terrible shit, you're going to get anxiety. Like there's this level of like guilt. But I also think it's what you're saying, which is that she doesn't like interacting with the real world. Absolutely. That is a big part of it. It's like she likes the fact that everything is kind of curated for her, right?
Right. I mean, yeah, she doesn't know how to handle any of that. Like she doesn't even do her own emails.
Right.
You know, like it's this like what?
Yeah, and ultimately, like she deals with it when she's thrust upon her. When it's like, you know, by the end, she's just having to deal with this shit herself. And she even like seems to kind of try to enjoy it because they mention that she like worked with tribes and stuff. Like there's this idea that like, oh yeah, she's been in the shit. You know, she knows what it means to be like a struggling artist, but she's so detached from that she like, I feel like in the end she's like trying to like romanticize it a little bit when she's moved on. Like she stops for that waterfall. She's trying to get a log, but you could tell that like, yeah, she really doesn't like the harsh realities of the world because again, those are the things she's constantly trying to avoid. Right. And she's hiding behind that privilege that she has.
Yeah. That part, I think this is one of those, like, it's sort of just painting an entire picture. You know what I mean? It's sort of like not even necessarily examining the relationship between all those things.
Yeah, I think it's also pointing out again that, like, at the end of the day, she's going to be fine. Like, she's living she's going at this nice hotel. She's going on these, like, seeing this beautiful sights. She's traveling again. Like, she's doing like an anime convention, but like it's like at the end of the day, again, it's not like she's like, I don't know, working a 9-to-5 job, you know, like
she's still able to do some version of her craft for money. That's 100% true. And like, and
she's more importantly, she's still in charge of people, which is what it really comes down to.
That's true.
Like that's the thing true. Is like she's probably going to continue to abuse her power because I think what they're showing is a person who continues to hide. Like it's that idea, right? It's someone doing monstrous stuff and they're hiding that guilt from themselves, which again is why like the one time they're confronted with it in the brothel, they're sickened by it.
Yeah, repulsed. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's an
interesting.
element of like these protective barriers she's putting between what she's really doing to people and what she's telling herself. And so
Yeah,
the movie never
that
really
seems right.
shows. Yeah, the movie never reconciles that because why would it? Like that's unrealistic, right?
Well, and if it did, I think it would be, it would feel less true. Weirdly.
yeah, exactly.
You know
because
what I mean?
people don't just say, "Oh, I learned my lesson," you know?
No, it's really no. It's a long, slow process to learn any lesson.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. I didn't think about that actually. I didn't think about the fact that she's still going to be conducting people. That's right. That she didn't lose that. And a lot of movies in different eras that she would be, you know, like strapped to a burger chain or something. Right? Like that. Like that's how they would resolve it in the past. And now
That's
they
why,
don't.
yeah, and I think this was actually a really realistic way of showing it. Because, yeah, there is consequences. She has been disgraced, for sure. But ultimately, the problem hasn't been solved. She is still in charge of people and can use her power to get what she wants from them, right? Like, that was actually the problem. And honestly, I don't know how you solve that necessarily, you know?
I mean, not if she continues to be a conductor.
Yes, and
Right?
it's like, yeah, that's of course all the question of this is like that's why people don't like supporting people, and it's like as a consumer, there's certain things to do, but it's like, yeah, what are you gonna do? You can't ban her from a job, like, right? And if you can't charge her with a crime, she's not gonna go to jail. So that's why I thought it was like a very realistic ending in that it's kind of frustrating. Where it's like she doesn't really learn anything. She's just kind of still in charge of people. It's just in her mind, her legacy has been tarnished, which, yeah, that's affecting her psychologically. But did really anything happen?
I mean, it doesn't undo the suicide that young woman. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't
Exactly.
do that.
And
So
it
like
won't- it
it's
probably
not
won't undo-
proportionate.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. And again, like the movie's not trying to moralize. It's not trying to say one thing or another, which is, I think, why I like it. Right?
think
It's
so,
just
too.
sort of saying this is what would happen. You know, this is it. Are these consequences enough for her, or are they not? She's still in power. She's still in control. You know, like, so like, I would argue like, no, she's probably going to victimize some more women.
There's no reason to think that she turned a corner here.
Yeah.
Like the entire third act is definitely her sprinting away from. Like,
right. She leaves
like
the fucking country. Like
there's no like, and then she checked into therapy. Like, you know, like none of
Yeah.
that happens, you know?
Right. She just gets away from it so she can create a new lie.
She has to leave. Yeah, she has to leave. And I mean, you're right. I guess on the trajectory she's on, there is no reason to believe that she would stop.
Right.
That's true. And I'm like just rolling around in my mind. Is that really what the movie is trying to tell us? And I guess it is.
I think the movie, yeah, the question of what the movie is trying to tell us, that's why I was saying, like, maybe if it's not something that people have been experienced or like it's a very good telling, right?
Yeah.
Of this. But it's not trying to like give us like a grand moral. It doesn't feel like. It's just sort of mulling these ideas around in its head, which I think, again, I like. I don't think movies have to have the answers.
It
you
never.
know?
So one thing it doesn't do is call into question whether we should have liked the music she conducted.
Right.
And that actually
No.
might be the one sleight of hand interesting thing about that. Like the fact that they made her a conductor means we don't have to question her music per se. Like she isn't Bach.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think that was kind of deft, but on the part of the writer director, so that they can still kind of have this art, like separate the art from the artist conversation without really examining that in any kind of detail.
Right. That.
You know?
I think that was on purpose. I think
Oh, I
we
agree.
see her. Yeah, we see her work a little bit, but it's not the point. And in fact, the girl she's grooming is like thinks of what seems to be a better. She's composing something on her piano, and the girl's like, I think this might be better, and she just sort of dismisses it. And I think the implication is like, this girl's probably more talented than her. Like she's considered
I don't know
the
if
best.
that's what we're supposed to take from it.
I think the idea is this girl has potential.
Yeah, she has potential,
and
100%.
one day she will. I think what they're implying is like Tar is good at what she does, 100%. But it's the idea of like nothing is worth human lives, obviously.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
there will be others. Like that's the idea, I think. And it's the idea of every new generation also builds upon the last and hopefully does a little more. You know, like they were kind of they were implying that, right? Where she's like, the composers before me were, they were seen as like circus acts, the women composers rather. And so like you could argue she is sort of like, victim's the wrong word, but like she is getting plowed over by the idea of progress, right? As well.
Or she's getting swept up into that. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, and that idea of like the people who are actually trying to find equality and progress, like they're not going to fucking bow down to the system or have reverence for the legacies of people who are shitty. Like that's a part of the step, right? Which is like,
and she doesn't want to. She doesn't want that. That's the part she doesn't want to adhere to.
Yeah, like I think part of it's kind of a generational divide that we're seeing too in the movie.
It could be. I mean, it could be. Yeah, I don't know what to think about, for instance, the scene in Juilliard. Having seen it twice, I definitely felt way more uncomfortable the whole time the second time. The first time
Great oneer.
It was amazing oneer. The first time I watched it, I was like, this is an interesting conversation, like a kind of a bold move of the film to bring this up on its face. Right. The second time, kind of knowing where we're going, and especially like watching the poor student with his leg shaking, like clearly being really stressed out by her.
Yeah, tremendous scene. Like we haven't talked about this, but the movie making, the filmmaking is great. But,
it's very good. It's also very it's one of the most gently filmed movies in a very long time. Like you'll never notice what the director's doing, but they're doing a lot of very cool things.
Right.
So it's well directed. The scene with the young man, I think that a lot of, if you don't already have like strong emotional feelings about this issue, but are like sort of, I think a person who likes to kind of dabble intellectually with both sides of that argument, you'll probably feel like she's making a great point until he flips out.
Right. Well,
you know?
I think.
But then in hindsight, that's not true. In hindsight, it's like, no.
Right.
She's actually terrorizing this guy.
It's the academic, like emotional removal.
Right.
And it's the reverence for tradition. Because I think what they're saying, because again, the guy who throws the fucking woman down the stairs that they're quoting as well, I think what they're saying is, one, if they weren't the person, someone else, like that idea, that theory that he says, like, people are more intelligent based on how much they can tolerate noises. It's just like, that's not true. That's not true.
Or how sensitive they are to noise.
Yeah, and it's like, that's objectively not true. They're acting like it's this, they're acting like this, it's this deep truth. And then they note that he threw his wife down the stairs. So what I'm actually hearing is that guy's an asshole.
Well, what's interesting,
he thought he was smart because he didn't like loud noises.
I have a different take on that, and I think I think we're going to end up in the same place on it.
Yes.
But I think the point is, like, the statement is that, you know, is your genius is commensurate to the idea that you're sensitive to noises, and then they bring up that he threw his wife down the stairs, and they go, but what does that have to do with his art? That's the next question, right?
Yes.
So then we cut to she's being bothered by noises, and her noises are guilt, which is to say that it actually does have to do with his art.
Yes.
Because it's actually like a way of sort of setting up this great other counterpoint that's great.
Yes, you know? Yes, we are arriving at the same place, because the idea is like just that analogy of the the thing versus, it's like, no, he clearly has a bad temper. That's why he thinks that, and so the they never stop to say, well, if this person was flawed, maybe their art was flawed. Maybe the mess, because they're constantly talking about what the composer is saying with their art, right? And this student is saying, didn't this person like father like 20 kids and was a scumbag? And she's saying, like, it doesn't matter. What about the music? And it's like, but that does matter because it's the artist. The artist and the art are one and the same. And the idea of like, are we going to hold reverence for art that what they're actually trying to say, and what this kid, I think the idea is he's nervous, he can't articulate it. But what he's circling is the idea of like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't like hold that art in such high esteem if it was made by someone who doesn't actually have a good grasp of reality or a good grasp of how to behave, right? It's certainly bringing that up. It's certainly bringing that question up. I think the other undercurrent of that scene is to show the impact that she has on people because of her reputation. Right.
Like just the amount of like how much people look up to her.
This idea that he's daring to challenge her too.
And she feels nervous about it.
Yeah. And of course, how dare someone challenge her? Period.
Right.
And again, I think it's no accident that this actor happened to work on a Kubrick film, because like Kubrick is of course the ultimate question of that.
Oh,
which is
good
like,
point. That's a great point.
That he was the pianist in Eyes Wide Shut, this actor, and so I can only assume he got a buttload of Kubrick. And of course, the answer always is, and I think you'd agree with me, is that no art is worth human misery or pain.
No, absolutely
emotional
not.
Or physical.
Not. How do I say this? Not when it's violating anybody's sense of propriety or goodwill or like certainly in Kubrick's case, I think consent.
Yes.
I think there are times he like legitimately would just force people to do takes that drove them out of their mind and stuff.
Right. And you can also say that doesn't mean the art itself is bad. There could still be good art resulted in terrible behaviors. However, you can make good art without doing that. And that's what it's like comes down to, which is like, I love The Shining. Kubrick shouldn't have done that. He shouldn't have done what he did to make that film.
There's some pretty heinous things. Yeah.
Yep.
Like,
great
and
movie.
Like, bear in mind, we're not talking about him like beating somebody or committing a crime. No. We're talking about him like legitimately psychologically berating his actors relentlessly until they, just can't hang with him anymore.
And if him not doing that means that The Shining couldn't get made, then that means he's a bad director. Like that's what that comes down to, right? Is like, if you can't make the movie without abusing your actors, then you're not good. You're bad. Like you're bad, not talented. And so like that's going back to like the reverence for the artist and stuff, where it's like, yeah, but it was good and it got made. And it's like, yeah, but does that make him a good artist? Like if that was the only way to achieve that? Same with like Werner Herzog, people who've made things that I think are good, are well made, are a piece of art. But it still is like, what does that say about the artist if they can't do that without hurting someone? That like surely he can make a movie without hurting someone. People do it all the time
without breaking up a marriage or without without driving his actors to near insanity.
Right. People make beautiful works of art without hurting anyone.
Right. I love that you brought up Kubrick, because I feel like that's actually. Like, I feel like Todd Field is uniquely qualified to make this film in light of that.
Yeah, and I think this is a lot of it, I feel like, is about Kubrick and directors.
It's about workplace abuse. I mean, ultimately, that's what this film's really about. It's workplace abuse.
You're right. It's everything. It's a ad agency. Like it doesn't matter where it is. It's still work. It's someone using the fact that they are they're the boss. And I think in art it works really well because it's this extra layer of they're also a genius.
Right. She's unquestionably like that's I think why this film is smart is it never wastes your time with things that you can just easily assume.
Right.
Like, it doesn't waste your time proving she's great. Instead, while you're hearing her resume, you're watching how carefully constructed this image of her actually is.
Right.
You're watching them like cut the tiny little inches that are going to be her suit jacket, and her pick from thousands of albums the actual bust of her that she wants to take for her book cover, and like her like meticulously like, you know, doing these breath exercises before she does the interview. Like, it's all very much constructed, which is why later in the movie she has this amazing line where they're like going to take pictures, and they show a bunch of like, you know, attractive looking, and I use that word on purpose, attractive looking photos of female conductors that are like seem more like beauty photography.
Right.
And she's like, can we do something a little less considered?
Yeah.
And the cut is to her with this gigantic tome of music that's, number one, extremely considered, and number two, she's never done a single thing that wasn't considered.
Right, of course.
Her name is considered.
Yeah.
Everything about her is considered.
Yes.
You know, it's great. It's really well done.
That is really well done.
Yeah, it's
And
really
yeah,
well
I
done.
think that's the ending punchline of taking this extremely like dignified character and then on top doing the Monster Hunter theme, and on top of it they make it the credits song, and that song is a banger. And I think the implication is like, this is good too. Like Beethoven,
Yeah.
sure. Also this, like this thing that's beneath her, it's like, this is good. Like, do you not also like this? You know? And this is like music for the newer generation. And again, like the, you know, YouTube, the stuff that she frowns upon is like,
That she would hate, right.
Yeah,
That
this
she
is
would
also
hate.
good. You know?
That's so funny. Yeah, like that's the part where I feel like there's a bit of a Rorschach test at the end, where like I feel like because I feel like you're seeing the movie as this like, yeah, like she, you know, like she doesn't get to do what she wants to do, but effectively it's sort of the same. And I see it and think like, well, this is exquisitely painful for her.
Oh no, it 100% is.
I mean, that doesn't mean that it's unfair. It's fair.
Right.
More like, in fact, it's better than she deserved, really. But like, but I still feel like I'm aware of the ego pain of it first and foremost.
Well, I mean, we are artists, right? And a lot of people listening to this are artists, and artists have like there's this feeling of like you've built something and you've made something, and to not be able to complete it because the whole thing is it's going to this final performance she's going to do, and she doesn't get to complete it,
And it doesn't
and
happen,
like
right.
there is a pain in that 100%, but I think that's again the point of the movie is to sort of point like they never say woe is her, because
No, they don't.
it's like
No, they don't do that.
yeah,
You're right.
because it's like that's not the point. The tragedy of the movie isn't that she didn't get to complete her art, it's the consequence. It's like, yeah, you fucked up, you did shitty things, and you know, that's what happens. And like it's not trying to lament that because I don't think that's the point, but you can't help to, as an artist, I'm sure this like musicians watching this probably feel it more than us, where it's like there is an element there of, I'm sure, like, oh, you know, the art side, like that's a shame for her, but not enough.
But not enough to feel different about how it is.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
Because again, it's like, well, she did all this shitty stuff. She's a terrible person, so you know, it's also what, you know, it's like you said, it's probably more than she deserves ultimately because she's still in a position of power. But I do think like there, obviously the movie is, it's like I would argue this is like any other movie like Scarface or Goodfellas, where like it's from the bad person's perspective, which doesn't mean that it's like, or because it's from that perspective, you can't help but to sometimes feel for the character because that's who you're watching, right? When the person goes to jail or whatever, audiences can like feel sympathy because it's a very human portrayal of someone doing monstrous things. They're not trying to make her a mustache twirling villain.
No, they're trying to make
So,
her a
like-
human being that did this. Yeah.
Right, and us being human beings with empathy are going to feel empathy. That's just going to happen. So I don't know. I think it's okay to watch this movie and feel a little bad as long as you know you and I think most people watching this movie clearly know what the movie's trying to say.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, it's unflinching in a good way, but it's also not. It's not trying to dance on anybody's grave. Like it's trying to be, right. I think, as matter of fact as this can be, without losing point of view entirely.
Right.
You know, like
it's not saying like cancel culture, am I right? Like it's not saying
100% not saying that.
It's also not saying like look at this terrifying demon. It's not American Psycho. It's not she's a sociopath. Although she's a narcissist. She's definitely like has very little consideration for others. She has a lacking of empathy.
There's a few moments like the thing that she did with her daughter's pretty wild, man. Like the way that she treated her assistant, who had worked for her for years, is pretty wild.
She's a bad person for sure.
She's cruel for sure. She's very cruel.
But it's painting a non-cartoonish picture of this person.
She kicks her
wife
out of,
which is what I think makes it work.
She kicks her wife out of the car at one point, and like that didn't totally stick with me until the second time through. Like she's legitimately scaring her wife because she's so furious about something else that happened, and her wife's like, slow down or let me get out. And the response to that is not slow down. It's then get the hell out. And it's very like, wow, man, really? You're gonna treat her like that?
She's an abusive, terrible fucking person.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like the key word, and I guess what I'm stressing is they didn't lose sight of the fact that she is in fact a person. And I think it's about, because I think we see people, online. We see, pundits. I won't name names, but like people who have made a name for themselves saying things that are absolutely horrendous or nonsensical. And I think the question a lot of people think about now is, how does that person live with themselves? How do they tell themselves those lies to function day to day? And I think that's what this movie was trying to show, which is like, here's how this type of person,
here's how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's how we have to have empathy for them because we are trying to show you how they exist. Because they do exist. And so it's like, everybody thinks they're their own hero. Everybody thinks they're the main character.
Everyone's the protagonist of their own story, but they never give her. They never give her a save the cat moment. I think crucially, they never.
She's not a good person. Yeah, they don't want us to think she's a good person.
No, yeah, she's actually pretty. In a way, like when you think about it, the first time I watched this, her storming out and attacking Elliot at the actual recording seemed like, whoa, this got really wild. But like. The second time through, it actually seemed kind of inevitable. It seemed like pretty inevitable.
It's mask off. It's the idea that she finally can't contain what she actually is.
Yeah.
And this was taken away from her, and she feels like she has a right to it. And like, the idea of it escalating to that point, it is shocking, but it also is like, everything has kind of been leading to violence. Like to actual violence, and it doesn't last long, but it's like, this person, that's what she's been holding inside of her this whole time. Again, it's the idea of the lie she tells herself, which is like, no, I'm a good person, I'm a genius, I deserve these things. And the moment that someone confronts her about it, she kind of falls apart.
I mean, well, I don't even know if it's the first. It's the first time she actually had to like. There was nowhere to run, right? Like it's
right,
really that.
Yeah, she's cornered. Yeah,
that's right. It's a hell of a movie.
Yeah, it really is. It's a good movie. I don't know where it stacks with all the other movies. I'm having. So it's funny is because like a few weeks ago we covered Ant-Man and we were pretty bummed about it. I want to stress this is that indie films have been very good. Like last year, it's like a situation where I'm like, I don't know what I like best. They're all good. I'm liking them all. It's one of the first Oscars where like most of the best pictures, I'm like, these are great. With the save for a couple.
I didn't see Fabelmans. I have not seen that yet.
It's good.
I bet it is.
It's not amazing, but it's it's a lot of fun. I thought it's like that's how it feels to me. Is like it's just been a really good year, 2022 rather, for art house films and for dramas, for like adult movies. I wish they were making more money than they are, but this was a very good movie.
Yeah, I'm kind of bummed that I only heard about it through a screener.
Oh, really?
By which I mean, and also because the Best Picture list. But like, you never see this movie like advertised on TV or whatever. Like, they just don't put. I mean, TV. It's harder. It's harder for a movie like this to reach people's eyes than it used to be.
If only there was like a podcast that looked at trailers and talked about trailers every week.
Did you look at a trailer for this movie?
Yes, we did.
Okay. How did you feel about it then? Did it live up to
the trailer? Looked awesome. Yeah. It looked like it was going to go even more off the rails. Like watching this, I didn't know what it was about. And then obviously at a certain point you're like, oh, I know what this is about. So like from the trailers, it looked like could this be fucking American Psycho? Is she going to kill people? And you could argue she sort of did, but you know what I mean? Is she going to be going
grounded.
around fucking
it's not ungrounded.
stabbing people? Yeah.
It didn't turn into a legit thriller.
And it doesn't need to be.
No. In fact, I think it would diminish what it is in some ways.
Yeah, if I had to, I have no real critique of this film. I will say this is a adult film, and what I mean by that is that if I was 22, even me, because I liked art. Like I was a film nerd, but there would still be a level of oh my god, you're talking for 10 minutes, Jesus,
especially up top.
There's that,
especially up top.
Up top, it's a slow start, and it is a slow film.
It's a simmerer,
slow adult film. I would say more if I was 16. It's not exciting. It's an adult Academy Award film. Yeah,
it's it's not. It's not going to grab you the way that grab your attention the way that a number of just a number of other thriller type films might. It's not flashy. It's very subdued. Like for instance, this film's color palette is mostly brown, gray, and blue. It's never very flashy.
No, it's not.
Yeah, it's really
Mark
restrained.
Strong doesn't shoot or anybody. He doesn't do anything cool and Guy Ritchie shit.
His hair is pretty amazing though.
Yeah, his hair. Yeah, his hair.
That hair is really. Yeah, that's a star for sure.
Yeah. But and the thing is again, nothing against this movie. Some movies are like that, but you can also make movies that are more exciting that also are good. But again, not a hit about this movie because I don't know. There's nothing I would change. I wouldn't make this like Everything Everywhere. I wouldn't make it zany. It's telling the story it needs to tell in the way it should be telling it. And again, that's why it's nominated and shit. It's a good movie.
It deserves it. I think it's a good film, and I think for so far it's my favorite of the year.
Yeah, it's no Ant-Man, but it's good.
It's no Ant-Man. I mean, I know you're going to do an Oscar podcast, but
I don't know.
Okay, well, if you don't, then I guess this is probably the right place. So, if Everything Everywhere All at Once wins, is that a great moment for the Academy Awards, or is that a surprise? What?
So,
what do you think about that?
I think that's a shocking moment.
Okay,
because
I do too.
So, what the Oscars to me reflects is I think the nominations are more important than who wins, because the studios decide who gets nominated. They're the ones paying all the money for the campaigns, and so the nominations, to me reflect what do studios think are the good films they made.
I think it's even more cynical than that. I think it's about making a reason for people to go see them. These art house films that they would not see otherwise at this point. That's the goal.
I agree with that as well. But for example, they got mad at that actress for doing a grassroots campaign, and it's what's wrong with that?
Why can't she do that? Yeah,
they're mad because she didn't spend studio money. The studios didn't get to say yes, we approve you. There's a gatekeeping, right? And so for that reason, the nominations never really reflect anything but what the studios consider are the movies they want to push for this. But what I was getting at is that Everything Everywhere All at Once, to me, very aptly with what we're talking about here, represents a new millennial era generation of filmmaking. It's very like Adult Swim. It's very fast paced, silly comedy. Like, like it's doing its own thing. It's not dry comedy. It's not slowly paced like Tar is, right?
It does represent a new vantage and adventure into searching for meaning, which to me is like what almost all these prestige films are. Like,
right.
You know?
Yes, but I mean the filmmaking style is like way more manic than what art is considered.
Than prestige films typically use.
Yes.
Not exclusively, but mostly.
Yeah, on top of that, I think the point of the film, it really represents a pain that is of our generation, millennials and younger. Like, the point of the film is this nihilism by the idea that nothing matters in this world and that you can't really get your life together. And it's about this, young girl's relationship with her mom. And I would say of the boomers I've talked to about that film, they all go like, oh, that was really interesting and good. Of the people our age I talked to, they go, that really cut through me. Like that, I felt seen. It meant like that movie, The Message, because it's dealing with this idea of like nihilism. Like, do we even have a fucking future? And so that, to me, that all circles the question of if it wins, it means that the people voting are way more in tuned. Yeah, are way more in tune with that than I would have expected them to be. I would be surprised.
I cannot believe they nominated it. And not because it's bad. I think it's great. But it really already suggests they understand it better than I thought.
Same. It was hard same, yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible the Academy might be getting a little younger.
That's what I'm wondering. I'm like, are they dying? Are they dying out? And they're like, that's what it feels like to me. There's still some stuff where, like, I, for one, think if Avatar is up for Best Picture, there's room for, like, Till. There's room for The Woman King, I would argue.
Yeah, they didn't like that one.
Yeah, which I think, again, if Avatar's up for it, fucking put The Woman King up there. That was a better movie as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
So, like, there's some still weirdness, I would say, but it was Everything Everywhere was definitely a positive, like, a pleasant surprise,
Yeah.
Will it win? I don't know. I honestly, like you said, like, it's more about the fact that it was nominated. I was like, shit. Maybe it was nominated because they're like, listen, everybody's talking about it. We don't understand it, but we better put it out.
Let's give it a nod. I mean, they also nominated Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah, they sure did. Which, again, very well-made movie.
Elvis.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
I haven't either. People like it.
Yeah, that's fine.
They really liked Elvis.
Yeah.
They put Austin Butler up for Best Actor.
Yeah. Fabelmans is up, which I would argue is like, it's good, but it's a movie about making movies, and I swear to Christ, if it wins,
it's a movie
about feel like so bummed.
It's a movie about Spielberg making movies. So
yes.
I think we all have to remember if
literally the only person who can do this.
Who and is such a legend in everybody's mind that I think it was a shoo-in.
Yeah,
so.
He could get on stage. So they could announce a different Best Picture. And he could get on stage instead and shove everybody down and scream, I made Jurassic Park.
Sure.
And and shove the podium down and take the award, and we would let him have it.
I mean, Schindler's List is the one to me. It's like once you've made that movie, you can win for other movies too.
It's the same with Avatar, where James Cameron's like, listen, do you want to give me back all the money I made for you? Because I built this fucking studio.
Right.
So it's like, they have a right. But I don't know. The point being that, like, I think other movies had a right to if they're putting those up. But, it is what it is, I guess.
I know some people who, I mean, I haven't watched Fabelmans. Did you watch it?
Yeah, I liked it.
Okay. I know a few people who are, filmmakers who... like Fabelmans is exactly the movie they wanted to see. Like, I know 4 or 5 people offhand that are like, that's the one. It's a little
silly. It's a lot of the power of film. They're like, there's a part where he uses the power of film. And it's like, Yeah, I mean, it's Spielberg, so it's like I'm enjoying this.
Sure.
He has some self-aware scenes. I actually think it should have been more meta, to be honest, because he has some meta moments, but not enough. I thought the last half was a lot more fun than the first, because that's when it starts getting a little more meta.
I would be 100% surprised if Cate Blanchett doesn't walk away with the Oscar this year from this.
She's deserves it.
I'm rooting for
Best
Michelle.
Actress? Yeah.
I'm rooting for Michelle Yeoh though. I'm rooting for her.
Oh yeah, I would love. This is what I mean. Is like I can't say I want this person to win because I'm looking at all these fucking movies, Best Director, Best Actress, Best Actor, and I'm just like, fuck, man, they all did a fantastic job. Like I want fucking Judd Hirsch to win Best Supporting Actor for Fabelmans. He's in one scene and he comes in like a fucking tornado.
Stranger things have happened, my dude. Did you ever watch Network?
Yes,
Network is incredible, and I want to say 2 people basically won acting awards for that movie that were in one scene.
Yeah.
You know?
No, yeah, it can happen.
Yeah.
And there's the Legacy Awards where they're like, yeah, you're gonna die soon. Let's give you an award.
True.
But the point being that there's other supporting actors. Fucking, damn it, who's up? I forget who's up. There's like the Banshees. There's Everything Everywhere. There's so many fucking people.
You gotta give it to Brendan Gleeson, right? For Banshees of Inisherin.
I don't know.
Man, he's so good in that movie. It's like
that's what I'm saying. Everybody's so good in all the movies.
Yeah.
They're all good, and that's the struggle I'm having. Where I'm like, at the end of the day, I'm like, it's one of the first times where I'm like, for the most part, whoever they name, I'm like, cool. You know, there's some that I like more for politics and stuff, but like, fuck, man.
Yeah. I mean, for real.
Yeah. And so, yeah, like Michelle Yeoh, I'd love to get it, you know. Ki Hoi Kwan, fucking Best Supporting Actor again.
That would warm my heart. It
would warm my heart.
I would love to see it because it would warm my heart.
Yeah, I don't know if he'll get it because, again, there's so many fucking people.
Yeah.
It's just... and whatever happens, I'm going to personally be pretty happy because I'm like, you're all winners in my book.
Because you were born happy, Dave. You bring the happiness with you.
This isn't a case of like La La Land, you know what I mean? Where I'm just like, one of these things is not like the other. One of these things snuck by and made everybody think it was really good. For the most part of the movies I've seen that are up for Best Picture and stuff, I think they all deserve to be on there. So, but I haven't seen them all. Except for Avatar. I don't think Avatar deserves to be on there.
You're gonna hate hearing this. I didn't hate La La Land that much. I thought it was fine.
I love that director. I loved Whiplash.
I love Whiplash.
I really liked First Man, even though most people that sort of passed people by. La La Land, I just thought it was a bad story. I thought the directing was good. Bad story.
Its story was fine. It was fine. Definitely not as good as Moonlight, right? Wasn't it?
Yeah. And it didn't win, so, you know.
No, it ultimately did not win.
Yeah,
That's
tried.
Correct. Yeah.
They slipped Warren Beatty some money.
Almost got it.
Yeah, they bribed that. They bribed Dick Tracy.
That's probably the most famous Oscar moment in history, right? Like, ultimately, it has to be, right? Like,
Yeah.
Anyway, we're not here to talk about Oscars. We did our job.
We did our job. We talked about Tar.
Yeah.
Good film. Everybody should check it out.
Yeah, definitely.
It's weird if you haven't watched it and you're listening to this.
Hopefully you've watched it.
Yeah. Adam, thank you so much for being here. Is there anything you want to say to the world? Just any pluggies you want to plug up? Plug away.
Here's some pluggies. Just if you're not checking out my video game podcast, One Upsmanship, check that out. It's around. It's about video games. You'll really like it. I have other podcasts on the Small Beans Network that you're no doubt aware of, and that's it.
We have a Patreon, patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. If you go on there for just $5 a month, you get access to exclusive podcasts like Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Fox Mulder's a Maniac, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and Spiel Boys. We watch movies every Friday night with our patrons. I don't know. Will we do an Oscar stream? I literally haven't considered that until this moment.
Oh, you're bringing it up, though.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe I'll fucking consider it later. I don't know. If we do one, I'm plugging it. If we're not doing one, then we're not doing one.
Then this whole 2 seconds was wasted.
Go to gamefullyunemployed.com for our merch and watch Tar.
That's right.
Again, short for Tarzan. She swings around in it.
Tiar!
Tar!
Tiar!
Tar! She should have, when she attacked Mark Strong, she went like, Tar! Tar!
Yeah, she should have. She
That
should
would have been
have.
amazing.
She, by the way, looks better in a suit than I will ever look.
Oh, yeah.
Like, just
extremely
like they
attractive.
really tailored, but I mean, just like they tailored her suits. Like she's so well dressed in
Yes.
a way. Like they bring attention to it. That's why I'm saying this.
Oh, yeah. I hate it when that happens, where you're like,
Yeah.
you'll look better than I could ever possibly.
I'll never look that good. That'll never happen.
I could get NASA to dress me, like to make me try to look good. And it'll never be as good as Kate Blanchett.
Nah.
Yeah.
She did it. Well done.